So what we're going to do today, I don't know how many of you were here back in January or February when we started this program, but we're going to do a second generation or a second follow-up on these trees. What we did was we had basically nursery stock, landscape nursery stock elms that we reboxed and chopped. So there was nothing on these, they were just a trunk. And what we have in the boxes, there's 3 of them that we started. I have 2 trees that I started several years ago, and I've brought them back. Now the first one here, the bigger trunk, I was unhappy with what it had given me prior, so I re-chopped it. And what you're looking at is the growth this spring. And it's only growing on one side. You can kind of see that it's growing on the cambium only, and it's giving me branches about 2/3 to 3/4 of the way around the tree. The other one is just an elm it has kind of a corky bark. That's 2 years worth of growth right there. So I had chopped it back and showed you guys that last time, and this is what we've got this spring. What I'd like to have everybody do is come up and sort of familiarize yourselves with this, because we're going to be taking off all of the unnecessary branches and then working on the trunks with what we keep and to try and sort of get the style going, okay? The other 2 trees were purchased, and I will help those folks make those decisions on those trees after we do this, the auction tree that's up first, all right? So if anybody who hasn't had a chance to see these would like to come up and take a look at them really quick, it will be a lot clearer what we're doing if you are familiar with the material before we start. So if you want to just take 5 or 10 minutes and everybody take a look, that'd be great, all right?
As the leaves get smaller, do the nodes get closer together?
Good, that's another good question. So what I notice in my garden is that I work on elms about 3 to 4 times a year, depending on how fast they're growing. The spring growth is the most explosive. And in this particular case, it's even overdone. So we'll mostly, what we leave is going to be only 1 or 2 nodes left on each branch that we keep, okay? And I would expect the next growth to be equally as explosive, because we've got way more roots than we need, all right? So as time goes along, though, during the course of the year, you're going to see the growth become less and less as it gets closer to the end of the year, and internodes will begin to get, finer, okay? So the 3rd or 4th pruning in a year is the one that you get to really pick and choose and begin to profile the tree, okay? So almost always in the spring, I push my trees way back to just, we're almost where it was the previous pruning, and then the next growth is a little bit less, push it back a little more, then like that, okay? And that's probably what will end up happening with these, all right? All right, so what's most problematic about this is that it's given us a lot of branching down low. And this being the auction tree, we get to do whatever we want. The other 2 trees belong to people who've purchased them. They're going to continue to be demo trees for the remainder of the year, but they will have a lot to say about what we keep and what we don't and how we style it going forward. I would hope that we're going to generally try to get a broom style out of it, which means we would want to have branches kind of be down in here and have the tree be like this, okay? Straight trunk, lots of canopy, lots of ramification. So, which branches do we want to keep, and where do we start? Obviously, all these low guys want to come off, right? So what did we pick for our front?
It was right here.
Okay.
So how tall do we want this tree to be? Because I think if we take one of these tall branches of the tree has to be.
Okay, so Mitch's first question, Matt's first question is, how tall does this tree want to be overall? So generally speaking, your trunk height is about 1/3 to 1/2 of the tree height, okay? So if we were to keep this as our height, then this tree would be someplace in that range, okay? So, if this first branch that comes from Cambium right here becomes our branch, we almost want to make that the front of the tree, right? So this would be our leader.
And so why he's saying that though is because this branch is kind of coming towards you, which is why you would switch the front to here, right? If this becomes the leading branch, you want it to come towards you, not away from you.
Doesn't necessarily mean that that's the branch that we have to keep as our, I mean, we could go lower down if Nabari is telling us we want to be someplace else.
And that's my question is, the Navarre is a little unusual, and there is a little wiggle. The Navarre is a little unusual for me, and there's a little wiggle very low. So do we want to make this tree smaller?
We could make
and
it
more squat, right?
Yes.
Sorry.
You're liking.
I like the front here, but I can understand it to be the back too. Like, but if this is the front, like the tree up here seems too tall. So do we choose maybe this one, or do we come down to one of these guys? Maybe this guy becomes the front.
Well, that's okay. So this would be very short.
Okay.
Something in this range would be very
Too
short.
short,
Okay. So I don't think you want to come too much below about
Below one of these guys?
Yeah. Now, a little bit of an issue with regarding that is that we don't have anything directly in the front. So we may have to pick something that's off to the side. By the way, this is a typical process, guys. I mean, you start with the idea in mind that this is generally what I want to do. You make the cut, and then the tree decides what it's going to give you. And then you work with what the tree is giving you to make your decisions. And so this is really critical. I mean, we're right at the point where we need to make some choices based on what the tree is giving us. And this is how it goes, always. Very seldom do you get exactly what you're looking for, especially when you're starting with nothing.
You sort of set a point on the tree, you guys were looking at it, and you sort of, I wouldn't really go below that point for this tree. To make your life easier, selecting a front and a height for the tree, would you just take off all the branches below there? Just clean up the trunk?
Pretty much. As soon as we know where we want to start,
Yeah.
then anything below that, if that doesn't work with the overall idea, would just come off. So as soon as we have a good sense of where we're going to put the front and which branch we want to use as our apex or at the beginning part of that whole deal, then we'll know what other branches to keep in respective to that, and everything else can come off, and then we'll shorten it down.
So this is a possible front, right?
Yeah.
I think the tree needs to be a little shorter just because
That's
the
fine,
trunk
we
is-
cut it off long to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think, but, you know, I'm no professional. What do you think?
This is your auction tree.
All
So
right.
you're calling.
All right, I'm gonna call the ball, watch. Now it's
I'm
gonna
working with you.
start a decline. All right, let's chop it.
So, okay,
So we can either keep this, all right, so this is an option right here, right? To keep this guy?
this guy or this guy up here.
Correct. Or we have on this side, let's go look at the other side real quick. We have this guy. This is too short, we agree?
Okay. Next point. For your apex, you want to have something that's pretty strong and vigorous. You don't want to go with, a really weak leader at this
just
point.
die.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would stick with some of these healthier, stronger branches.
Okay.
Be a good place to start.
Okay. So should we, because there is a little angle here at the bottom, should we be looking at right here? And that leaves, say, this guy could be, or this guy could be an apex branch. And we still have the two on the back. that you choose from, but this looks potentially nice.
So how about we do this? Let's start by just taking off some of these guys up above. And we're going to take this off, right?
I think that's right. So when we take this off, we're not going to cut it flush. We'll leave a nub for it to potentially die back.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reason I'm going to do it with cutters is I don't want to damage any of what we're trying to keep. So I've got a little bit more control than if I get out the power tools.
I don't know anything about this, so could you explain why you're going to pop up like that?
We're gonna train one of these other branches to be the new top. So we're going to take this back down and create a little bit of an angle on it and bring a branch up to be another top, okay? Does that answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I know earlier you said that you preferred to use the liquid cut paste over the putty cut paste because you didn't want to interfere with cambium growth. On a cut like this one, would you use the putty to intentionally stop it from making anything new out of this area?
Oh, the putty is covers up the cambium a little bit and makes it a little more difficult for branches to grow.
Yeah, so I was asking, because you're cutting back and you already have all this branching, would you intentionally do that because you don't want new branches from this area?
I could use either or. I think I'll just use the regular green cut paste in this case, but and then just keep it under control. But that's a good question. There's no, I mean, typically a little bit more on this. Are you happy with this?
Yeah.
Nah, not yet. I've got one. Or let me spin it around. Clean that up later. How much of this down here do you want to keep? No, I'm going to take off all of this.
So one thing to note when he's making these cuts, he's not like, he's cutting like this with the trunk, not like this, because this creates a larger wound than cutting like this.
Quick question on your cuts right now for the lower branches. Is there a recommended ratio when you're looking at a broom style like this as to how much, where you start the lowest branch on the trunk?
Did you hear that?
No.
She was asking about like the lowest branch, like is there like a ratio based on the trunk?
You know, so if we're gonna have our tree be up in this range right in here, I know kind of the general idea, and so we're bringing this guy up, right? Am I wrong? Or is it this one? Is it this one? Yeah, this guy, because of this. Okay, so
Yeah, don't worry about him.
the Mitch liked this, the bar right across the front right here. So that's why we selected this branch to be on top, okay? So I'm keeping stuff that's relative to where that is to create side branches for our branch. So this guy's gonna be up, and these guys are gonna be more this way and begin to create that. So anything that's from here down is coming off for the most part. Mitch mentioned a little bit earlier that I'm trying to make my cuts vertically. Sap flows up the tree, right? So if you cut across this way, then you create a cut that looks kind of like this. That means to heal, the sap has to run all the way around like that. If you cut vertically this way, less heals faster. Does that make sense? So that's not always something that you can do because you're reaching in between branches sometimes and you can't get in there to go vertical. It's just too awkward. But if you can, try to create your cuts vertically this way, okay? Not much left, is there?
And that's the demo.
So all we're going to do now, right now, is we're going to take this and we're going to wire this up. I'll clean this up a little bit later on, but this is pretty much where we're going to leave it for right now. Not a whole lot going on after that, right?
You gonna taper that anymore as you work on it, or leave it as flat as it is at the cut at the top?
Because I've got this guy happening right here, it's going to help it heal faster. So I'm going to leave that for the time being. We've got a branch back here that will help us. You know, in the end, we'll probably end up keeping this lower branch, and we'll be able to then come across it a little bit more of an angle, okay? But right now, we want to start healing that scar up. I could probably potentially. I don't know. I kind of am torn right now. I kind of want to leave it and see how things go, and then make a decision a little later on. Options. If you try and do too much to it and it doesn't give you what you want, then you're playing catch up all the time. If you give yourself options and it doesn't give you what you thought you were going to get, but you get something else that works, then you've got a chance, right? So, broom styles generally are straight, hefty trunks that go like this, and then you get a lot of branches. And so that's what we're trying to create here. So we're trying to create this nice bottom, and then a good swell going up, okay? Okay, so we're going to wire, eventually, I'm just later today going to wire this up. I'm not going to cut this I want this to just run, and we've already got good side branches started, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. This thing is going to take off. We'll wire it in position, we'll let it take off, and then next go around, we'll push it back and create a lot of the side stuff, okay? That makes sense?
Mike, what are the advantages again of doing that V cut that you just mentioned? And I noticed on one of the trees that was already done.
So this tree here, I started this tree 2 years ago. And it basically, it gave me 2 alternate branches. I don't know if you were up here and saw that, but okay. And so I just, once I knew that I wanted to have those be my 2 main leaders, then I basically did the V-cut in between them. But I didn't do that until last winter, okay? I gave it a full year or year and a half of growth to understand what it was going to give me, and then I worked with what it gave me. Same as what we're going to do with that tree, okay? We're going to let it go through, and then in August we'll be able to see what it's given us, and by next January we'll be able to go ahead and clean it up that way, and it'll go forward, okay? So now with this tree, this year it's been, like I said, it's been in here for a year, over a year and a half. It's almost 2 years in this box, and at this point it is giving me a whole lot of options, which is good. This is what you want. You want a whole lot of options, but this is like 2 years down the road, right? So this is a pretty good example of where those guys are going to be about a year and a half to 2 years from now, all right? So what we'll do here is we're just going to go through and pick and choose what we want to keep. I actually got a new volunteer out of the cambium layer right here in front. I don't think I'll keep that because it's like right in your eye, right in the front, and I kind of was going from side to side, this guy right here. So I'm going to take that guy out because it wasn't part of the plan. This side branch, I kind of liked it as a first branch. It typically balances, it seems to kind of balance out the look of the tree. You know, eventually I need to start bringing it down, but I left it really long because the other branches, my other main branches were much larger, and I needed this one to thicken up to catch up to those guys. What it's done is it's given me all the growth out at the tip and nothing back in here, which is kind of problematic. So now I need to make a decision because I can't keep letting it grow out here at the ends. This isn't going to work. So it's got one little bud back here and a second branch right in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off this right here, and I'm going to shorten back all of this side growth and see if I can't force it a little bit down inside. Now I'm also, and this is pretty typical of elms, if you don't, when you cut, if you don't flat cut right against the trunk like this, right here, I don't know if you guys, if it keeps spinning the same way, it quits spinning, doesn't it? So if you flat cut right against the trunk like this and seal it, you don't get too much happening around it. If, on the other hand, you leave a little bit of a stub there, like that, then it'll continue to pop branches all around in that collar area. So if, for instance, you have a branch that, say one of these, if I had wanted to keep something down here, and I had left this and I had stubbed it, it would have given me all kinds of branches around there. And so, say you're starting with a piece of raw stock and you need that branch, but you need a branch there, but it's way too big for the rest of the tree, then you can stub it off and it'll start giving you little side branches which you can then grow into the size branch you need to be, which is what I'm trying to do with this. But because I haven't cut it, it's continuing to give me back bud in that collar. And I don't need all of those guys. I need it to do this down here. I need something here and something here, okay, to create branches. So I've got to take the ones that are on the top off. And I'm just going to leave I'm not even going to, well, this one's in the back, and so that really doesn't help me. So I'm going to take it off too. And hopefully it's going to, it's got enough energy when I cut this all back up on top that it'll start pushing harder on this branch here. If not, I can use something later on as a thread graft and push through there and start a better branch, okay?
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
With that lower branch, I think you cut it back to try and make it back bud a little bit, but I thought you said that you left it long so that it could thicken up. Won't that prohibit it?
So it's still really early in the season. So it's absolutely perfect. It's kind of a catch. It's kind of a yes and no kind of an answer. It wasn't giving me anything even when I let it run, in the spring. So if I push it back now while there's still plenty of activity early on, I'm hoping that it'll just, by pushing all the rest of this back, it will start to create some back budding in there, which I will then let run and thicken up that branch. The more branches you have coming off of a single branch, over time, that's going to help to thicken that branch much quicker. If you just leave one leader on, then it's just that leader and it takes a lot longer for it to swell. But if you can get 3 or 4 branches coming off of something and let those run, it'll swell a lot faster. And so hopefully that's what I'm going to get, but I don't know. I mean, the lower branches in a broom style want to be more lateral. And then as it works its way up, then you start to get that canopy look, okay? So you start the main part of the lower branches to be lateral, not down, but lateral, this way. And then any branches that come off of that start to fill in the canopy to get that nice, well-ramified canopy that we're going for. So I've got some of the branches that I'm working on back here are kind of heavy, but they're growing straight up. If I can get a side branch coming off of that I can wire out like that, then that's going to make sense, right? So I've got two chances down here to begin to do that, or I can bring down this guy to do that, which I think that's probably what I should do. I need to, this is on me. This is, okay, so one of the big advantages of growing in boxes is that when you want to bring a branch down, you don't have to wire the branch. You can just put a screw, a lathe screw into the side right here that has a kind of a washer behind the head, and I've got some over there I'll have you show them to you guys. And then you pull the branch down with a piece of wire this way. You don't wire the branch. And probably the real advantage to that is that you don't get big wire marks in your branches. I wired some branches and didn't pay attention, and now they're cutting me out, wires cutting in, and I'm laughing at myself because I know better.
Question? Michael,
Yes,
are you working now on like the secondary structure? Is that what this process is?
okay, so, yes, I've actually kind of started to kind of clean it out and get stuff going in the right direction. Backside, bottom side, those kinds of things are all coming out. And, you know, alternating the branches to try and create, you know, good basic structure. A lot of this stuff, over time, you know, some of these branches may end up going away, but it's all pulling in the right direction right now.
Okay.
So thank you, that's exactly what I'm trying to do, just trying to kind of clean it up and get everything sort of aimed in the right direction at this point. So basically, you can see that, you know, this guy will kind of come down into here, start to create that kind of shape.
Were these leaves the same size as the previous tree?
Question, these leaves were the same size as, oh, okay, so I would expect that in time, these trees will all be more like this.
Yeah, so that was like that.
Yeah,
2-3
these
years
are all
ago.
elm family, but they're not necessarily the same variety. This is it's got a lot of bark on it. These are Chinese elms, they're more of a smoother bark. So it's a little bit difficult to say it's going to be exactly like this, but it will be close, okay? Do you all know about friction tape? Has anybody here, do you guys know what friction tape is?
No, sir.
Black electrical tape that's kind of sticky on both sides. You can find friction tape in most, like Lowe's and Home Depot in the electrical department. Sometimes they call it different stuff, but when you push on a branch too hard or something like that and it kind of cracks, I find that if I wrap it with friction tape kind of tight, that it holds its position and it will heal. So you don't necessarily have to break a branch off or cut it off if you crack it. You can wrap it with this stuff and it's really wonderful. A lot of guys are starting to use this when they do heavy bends on trees. They'll wrap, you know, put several layers of friction tape around and then put raffia over top of it. This stuff holds the moisture really well and it's super strong because it sticks to itself. If you leave it on too long, it'll actually choke the branch. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. But it's better than the plastic stuff. Way better because it sticks to itself, number one, and plastic just looks ugly. The stuff has kind of a cloth feel to it, and it's nice. All right? Good tip. It took me a long time to figure that out.
When you worked on mats, okay?
Yeah.
You guys were talking about keeping one branch pretty regular, but then on the back side of it, you were also keeping another. Now, on this one you're working on, where you said you cut the V because you had the two that you like.
So I do have a low back branch back here. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you. So that tells me that that's part of your style, I mean, your structure. That back branch is very important. Otherwise, I would just be thinking of a slant cut and nothing.
So typically, I style deciduous trees to look like trees rather than conifers, you know, which have a completely different style. And I know that convention says that, you know, you don't put anything, you know, you have a first branch and then you have something in kind of in the middle with the back branch and then a side branch or a first side branch, a second side branch, and then maybe a back branch behind. I don't necessarily follow that convention on a deciduous tree. I'm trying to build a silhouette to show off the trunk. So if I can get a lot of ramification behind with with this air through the branches, then that looks really attractive to me, and I'll do that all the time. I don't necessarily have to have, first, second, and back branch thing like that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Michael, and in fact, I like the fact that you tell me why I can break the rules, because, it's a choice. But what I'm asking here is this, as you're making those choices, selecting what branch you want to keep and what you're cutting away, that you started this with a lot of choices, you said, and you're eliminating some of those branches. Why? Why are you choosing to keep something over another?
The lower branches, I'm trying to train them to be more lateral in the beginning, okay? And then I'll build ramification above them with, branches coming up off of those lateral branches. If I start with stuff going up, it makes it really difficult to create this kind of a movement. Does that make sense? So first branches kind of are more straight out, and then off of those will come, and then we just kind of go back like that and create it. Does that answer what you're going for?
No, what I'm looking for here
I
is
guess I'm not hearing them exactly.
clarification as to, so you picked that branch, and we talked about it. You talked about the first one, how you cut it back, and now it's going to pop out, and we'll get more choices on that very first branch. So as you go up and you're picking the branch you want to keep, are you thinking in terms of, so this is going to grow up in this direction, and then I'm going to cut it back halfway to get that side growth to grow and give me the ramification I want?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm beginning to see your
So
structure.
there's two things I'm looking at. A is to get a good spread of branches. So I'm directional pruning to get that kind of a look, number one. But number two, the other thing I'm looking at is what the internode length is. And internode length is if you're trying to build ramification, the most important thing is to keep your internodes nice and short. Okay, the wider that internode gets, the fewer branches you're going to have and the less ramification you're going to have. There's two things that control internode length. One is leaf size, so big leaves kind of shadow and don't allow interior branches to grow necessarily, okay? The other thing is the time or the part of the season when they're growing. Early on, branches stretch out really quickly and you get large internode lengths, okay? So you end up cutting off the majority of that growth because the internodes are just too strong, too wide. And so pushing back to just a couple of internodes creates a really short gaps between leaves, and that's what helps you build your ramification over time. Later in the season, when the growth isn't as strong, then internodes stay small, and you can leave more of it on, okay? And that's what helps to build out a tree quickly. So it's time of year and internode length and direction are the three things that I'm kind of watching as I go through this process.
About how many primaries do you think you need to build the broom on a tree this size?
How many primary...
How many primary branches do you think you need to build
In
out of this broom?
In this case, we'll have... I'm going to actually add a branch that wasn't here last year because it kind of in a cool place. So it'll be more like I have stuff like this. I'm hoping to get something a little more lateral coming out of this, but I don't know. I may end up having to take this off. Okay, but then, I'll begin to kind of pull it down and see what I can get. But, right now, this guy is going to kind of be more like this. That kind of where you guys, I appreciate the questions. I'm having a hard time because over the loudspeaker it's a little garbled.
Yeah, I was asking not which branches, but how many total, branches off the trunk do you think you need to build a nice broom? Like 4 or 5?
In the beginning, you're only looking for what needs to be there, but, It depends on how big the tree is gonna be.
Right.
So larger tree, you want fewer branches initially because you're gonna have more at the top. In this particular case, you know, I've already made those decisions. Basically, it's these 4 right here. And then we'll go from there, okay?
That's good, thanks.
So this is just, because this is more of a backside branch, my direction here is, I'm gonna look for this node right here to come back this way. I don't want to chop it off too short. Typically, well, having said that, so this inner node length from here to here is almost 2 inches. So realistically, I need to cut this off clear back here. More than I thought I needed to, but that's what I'm going to do. Too many branches, Carla.
So many choices.
Too many choices.
So the last time you were here, you brought these trees in and you cut them off, whack. And I think what we're seeing here is how the choices appeared from taking that whack where we just cut it off straight and couldn't imagine how that was going to turn into a tree into what you're working on right now. Because like I see all the structure beginning to develop, I see how you're picking things that are going to become a nice flow and movement of that tree. So that understanding that this is how I'm going to work this tree into its potential from that flat cut just makes it a very exciting process to look.
I think that was less of a question. Here's one comment on how last time you cut everything flat, and it was really hard for us to see how a tree was going to come out of that.
Yeah.
And now, like, the ability to make decisions has emerged, and it's interesting to see that. I don't think there was a question there.
There we go. Boring part's over, guys. Some of these guys need to come down to start to create more lateral movement. This is basically kind of where it wants to be at this stage, okay? So I've tried to do mostly shorter internodes and directional pruning and create as much of a beginning of a fan as I can. And so that's what we sort of end up with at, year 2 in the spring, okay? By the end of the year, this is going to start to have filled out a lot. And by end of year 5, it'll all be about how fast can this part in here heal and look like a tree.
I have a question. They seem to grow, you have 2 that have a lot of growth on one side and the other side a lot less. Do you turn them? Does it have anything to do with their situation?
Oh, I turn them constantly. So which side do you think has most growth on it?
Well, that one.
This side, this branch? This is the apex kind of, this is going to be the major part of the branch. It's going to come off of here. These guys are all secondary. So yes, this one's I'm paying more attention to this one. I need to start to bring it back this way to get.
So that wasn't just accidental that it happened to be so.
These 2 both are the strong, but I'm pushing this one back a little harder because I want it to be a little more secondary than this. Okay. But absolutely good question. That's a really good question.
What's your sort of thickness window on these branches coming off of Chinese elm before they start snapping rather than moving?
Moving, what do you mean?
So like this one you were saying you wanted it to be a little lower?
Yeah.
At this thickness, is that still movable, and how long before it's just going to snap?
Typically when I start, branches during the growth season, I mean, you move it a little bit now, and then you wait, and and then you'll be able to move it a little bit further. You know, as soon as it starts to relax in that position, then you'll be able to, so you kind of do it in stages, depending on how flat you want it to be. So I'm not going to do too much pulling on it because I really want the branches from back here. I don't, these ones out at the end, I just as soon cut those off and get something back in here.
But a branch this size is at this point pretty much immobile, right?
It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it has to be. All good questions, and I apologize for having to, you know, go through that whole pruning stuff. I mean, look at... Any other questions? That's pretty good for, you know, first prune on the second year. I mean, there's a lot of possibilities going on there in a really short period of time.
So Mike, from here, full sun, you have Osmocote on it. Would you still hit it with additional fertilizer every 10 days?
Okay, so I put, well, actually, I only really fertilize about three or four times a year. Whenever I prune, I fertilize. So the Osmocote I like because it, you know, the nitrogen level at 14 has, it lasts for about 12 weeks. So it pretty much matches my my pruning schedule. So the other thing that I use, some of you may have seen it, is these little black pellets. It's chicken poop, guys. Nothing special. It just smells. A lot of people don't like chicken poop because it has some ammonia in it, which trees can get burned easily with a lot of ammonia, but this doesn't have that much in it. And if you're just using it sparingly on the top, it's a good organic material for elms and broadleaf evergreens. I don't know how good it would work on junipers, but I use it and it works fine. Conifers, pines, and all that stuff I use it on. I use it, so I put it on every 3 months, and the Osmocote continues to fertilize the entire time. The thing that's really cool about Osmocote is that I like to refer to these little guys as, like, you know, M&Ms for trees. It's got a hard candy shell and a kind of a liquid center, and it's activated. That center is activated with heat and moisture. So as you water and put it in full sun, this stuff is constantly fertilizing your tree. And you can tell when it's spent because you can pick it up between your thumb and finger and squish it. And if it's dry, it's no longer viable. You should probably be thinking about refertilizing pretty soon. If it pops and there's liquid all over your hands, that's the good stuff. So there's still good stuff in there, all right? Any other questions? So I'm just going to talk really briefly about this other tree. This guy's got way too many branches in too short a space. And this is a real problem. And I'm not going to bore you with all the pruning on it right now, but all of the growth is happening right here. And I need growth all the way around to make this work. So bigger trunk. Most of the growth came from the cambium layer. Very little growth came on the trunk itself, like these other trees. All these other trees have lots of growth up and down the trunk, right? And so, and I suspect that it's because over many years, you know, it just doesn't have the ability to sprout easily from the trunk. It sprouts easier from up here. My problem is I want branches, 4 or 5 branches all the way around so that I can begin to shape the internal part of this and grow that nice broom on this guy. and all of it's concentrated right here. So by thinning a lot of this out, I'm hoping that it'll give me a lot more branches back in here. And I don't need a lot. I need just a couple on each side and maybe one on the back side, and I'm good to go. So I'll have 3 or 4 across the front and 3 or 4 more back around here, okay? So I'll be thinning this out a lot, down to just 2 or 3 pieces, and hope that pushes more back over here.
Mike, once you thin it out, will you score the other side at all or do anything to try to coax it to bud?
When you say score it, are you talking about trying to relieve some
Yeah,
of that?
like take off a little bit of the cambium, just not like down the xylem, but just a little bit so that it might pop something
I
out.
hadn't thought about that, but, you know, it might work. I've never had this problem before. I've always gotten pretty, and they've got a lot of big roots back here on this side, so I'm having a lot of trouble understanding why this side is growing so much stronger than this side. But I thought I would bring it and share with you that this kind of stuff does happen. It's not the plan, it's what the tree gives you, and that's how do you fix it.
Well, that's why I was wondering if it was up against a wall or something.
Full sun, out in the middle of the yard, full sun. And I've been swapping, I actually have left this side, the sun kind of goes this way in my yard. So I've turned it and left most of it on, facing this side. Wet the trunk, do all of those fun things. Nothing.
It's like a cat.
Yeah,
So if you're unable to get it to pop from the other side, big slant cut, and then you just start building.
and it won't be, not my favorite tree if I have to do that.
Yeah, I was wondering if it just goes back in the ground and turns into a garden tree.
Yeah, I don't think I'll do that, but, I'll just keep working with it, if not, it'll be somebody's lucky tree. Any other questions? Thank you, guys. One of the other hats I wear is I'm the chair of the GSBF, and we're about ready to hold our October Bonsai Rendezvous up in Santanella. We have the save the date cards over here on the raffle table. I hope you'll all take a look. We're going to open registration on June 9th, full registration on June 9th. We have about 24 different workshops available. Fred's going to be doing one on chochabai, single trunk chochabai, along with 23 other well-known people throughout California doing workshops. Full registration June 9th, you'll be able to sign up for workshops. We open in July, I think on the 6th of July for single day registrations. Any workshops that are remaining, those people will be able to get those. But I hope that you all take a look at these. We have Suthen and Moro this year. And they will be doing not only bring your own tree workshops, but they will also be doing demos on Saturday. And then we do a thing we call Breakfast with the Headliners, where we auction off trees in advance of their styling. People purchase those, and then they work with Suthen or Moro, depending on which one you win, and style the tree. We do that Sunday morning, and it's always a good time. So I hope all of you will join us up there. This is our fundraiser. This is what we do to raise money for our give back program to all of the clubs. So this is a really important fundraiser for us.